So how do we know that God actually exists? Well, this is a very, very, very big question, which obviously many people have asked over many, many, many years throughout the history of the world. It's actually a very simple answer to this question. It's one of those things where it can be overlooked and people can pursue their lives, or they can focus on it. And I'll give reasons as to why the question about whether God exists, it's not answered for various reasons, which I will go on to explain. So firstly, I'll say this: God cannot be seen. His divine properties and his overall being are not in this physical world. They are in the spiritual world, spiritual dimension. So for example, what you can see, you can't see God directly, but you can see his works. That is how you know he exists, and that is the evidence and proof for God. It's very, like I said, it's very plain and very simple. I'll give you an analogy on this. For example, imagine yourself in an art gallery looking at paintings by various artists, some of which are just amazing, and you're blown away. You think, wow, they're amazing paintings. Now, you don't for a second think to yourself, there is no artist, no one painted these, it's absurd. Well, that is basically how easy it is to realise that God exists. Because, for example, here I've got some pictures of nature, and if you just look at nature, examine nature, look at the world, you will see that it has been put together exquisitely. A genius is behind it. The beauty of the sky and the clouds and the heavens and the trees and the water and the grasses and the plants, everything amalgamated into this incredible creation is absolutely phenomenal. Wisdom has gone into this. Okay, now this is absolutely in your face every day. So in other words, this painting, this picture, this visual reference to God, almost like a constant advertisement, although it is constantly in your face, it can be ignored. It can be ignored because it's so obvious, which sounds absurd, and it's almost like a catch-22. It's such a strange phenomenon that something that God has used to advertise himself, to show himself through his creative works, can be overlooked because it's so obvious. So God is constantly talking. He's actually shouting at the top of his voice, look at what I've created, because that is what creation is doing. That is what the natural world is doing. It is shouting out the power and the glory of God's creation. And it's in your face. It's like being in that art gallery. You don't ask yourself, are these paintings somehow here because there's no painter, there's no artist? It's absurd. It's the same with creation. God's divine qualities and all of his power, well, not even all of his power, but his power and his creative hands, his creative works are clearly seen by everybody. And even more so nowadays, because although we don't travel around all the parts of the world, we can see images, pictures of all kinds of different things now. that we've never been able to see before, even beyond into space. Right, so that's the first point. Creation is clear to see. It's obvious, it's plain, it's simple. That is the way God has made it. It's not some great mystery. It's not like, oh no, does God exist? Does he not exist? How? I'm confused. It's not confusing. It's simple. It's plain. Honestly, without sounding patronizing whatsoever, I'm just being honest. A child can see this. This is how God has made it. So obvious. So please don't be confused. Now, again, let's just keep on the nature sort of theme here, and then we can think about the stars, the sun in the sky, the moon, the stars at night that come out. Again, all amazingly balanced, and it's a natural phenomenon when you see all the stars in all their beauty. It's just amazing. And God has created the world to be like this, to have this day that happens again and again and again, repeats itself. You're almost reborn every day, as it were. You know, and you go to sleep and you wake up. It's just an amazing creation. And let's look at some other aspects of nature. Childbirth. I'm not even going to attempt to go into the details of childbirth here, because I'd be here for an extremely long time about the way a woman's womb is made to carry a child, and the way in which man and woman come together to make a child, and the way in which the egg goes from being not fertilized to being fertilized, and then the fetus forms, and etc., etc. I could just go on and on and on and on and on, but I really won't, because that's something you already know. You already know how amazing childbirth is, and the way we have all grown in our mother's wombs is genius. It's an engineering masterpiece. The way all the organs in a woman's body move as she grows bigger and bigger, and the way the child is fed when it comes out of the womb with the breast milk, and it's just the whole thing. The chamber in the baby's heart that opens up once it can start to breathe, and its oxygenated blood comes circulating into its system through the lungs. And I won't go into it all, but again, this is not some great mystery. It is not a great mystery. Please don't think it's a great mystery to think that God is real. It's the most obvious thing in the world. Here's another one. Animals. The animals, all there in all their glory. Again, I won't go into the variety and the amazing creative power that's gone behind these animals. Absolutely amazing, and they are splendid and magnificent, and they are extremely interesting, and these creatures are just fabulous. The birds are amazing. The crocodiles, deer, hedgehogs, giraffes, tigers, lions, hippopotamuses, elephants. It goes on and on and on, and each one are so amazing. So amazing. This is not some kind of evolutionary process. Please don't believe that rubbish. You know, things do not happen themselves. They don't. It's so obvious. It's bananas. It's actually intellectual suicide believing in evolution. Is honestly, please don't. Please rethink, because everybody knows beyond a shadow of a doubt that things don't create themselves. It's honestly that simple. It really is. All this nonsense about mutations and all this, and something going from a lower state of order to a higher state of order, and just creating itself. And it's obvious that doesn't happen. Any idiot can. I mean, I don't want to sound patronising, but it's really true. And evolution is not a fact. It is not a fact. Now, I'll leave some links in the description for this video that clearly shows evolution isn't true. And to be honest with you, I'm not going to dwell on evolution for too long because it's honestly so bananas. It's kind of an excuse, really. It's a scientific excuse not to believe in God. Okay, so we are still keeping on the creation theme, the creative works that are all around you all the time. So I'll move on to the next little category I've got here: flowers. Flowers are absolutely amazing. The variety, the exquisite beauty of a flower, the fragrance. It's amazing, and it's God telling the world, telling the human beings that he's created that he loves them. That's his way of showing it. Why do we give flowers? To show love. Why? Because that is the unworded beauty of a flower. I love you. Of course it is. It's so obvious. Again, so obvious. Okay? I could go on about flowers. I could just go on and on and on, but I won't. Here's another one. Fruit. Look at the way the trees give us these incredible fruits and grains. Amazing. So obvious. The variety of flavours, the textures and colours. Again, all worked out. All worked out. Also as well, children. Children give us an amazing, absolutely amazing element in our lives. Families. The way we grow up, the way we can interact with kids and have so much fun. And they're so funny. And God's made them so pure and lovely. And he wants children to grow up and realise the simple truth that he exists. He loves people. God loves people. And a child, sometimes we have to think about ourselves as adults. Are we just trying to wear this intellectual crown and explain everything ourselves and do? Why are we trying to do away with God when it's so obvious? What are we doing? So we need to rethink about that. Children are phenomenally powerful in the way that they present the attributes, beauty of creation as well, that God has put there. It's absolutely amazing. Again, it's so obvious. Children, families, people, the way we all interact has been created. Again, it all shows that God exists. All these things are elements showing God is there. He exists. So again, it's like the painting, but even more so. This is a living art. This is living art. Man and woman. Need I say more? The way we are so matched together, and I could go on about the intricacies of the human mind, how we interact together as man and woman is absolutely amazing. God, again, has clearly shown us that he exists by making us in this way. It's so obvious. Now that I've shown those very clear and very plain and very simple points, I'd just like to go on and explain. It's not really a question of does God exist? We know he exists. That's obvious. It's a question of why don't we believe in him? Or why don't we acknowledge him when we know he exists? Okay? And there's different reasons for that. Now, one can be that you believe in mainstream science, and in conjunction with that, you can live how you want. Do what you want. You don't have to start abiding by rules and regulations regarding believing in God. So this is the thing with God. Everyone knows he exists. It's obvious. You'd have to be honestly, without being patronising, you'd have to be idiot, really, at the end of the day, to really stand there and say, well, actually, no, after all this, I don't believe. Come on, it's so obvious. It's so obvious. Either that, or you have to be very, very, very fooled. Very, and I respect how people function, and I respect the world, and I know that people have different viewpoints, etc., etc. But I can't lie and say that God's existence isn't plain and simple. It is. I'm not going to lie. It really is that simple. People, like I say, don't really want to acknowledge God because they don't want all the rules and regulations that go with God and the spiritual aspects. People don't like that. You see, the thing is, we were created to live. Human beings were created to live by our human nature and do what we wanted when we wanted. But the trouble is, sin came into the world and it's changed a lot of things. And our lives now are controlled by God's wisdom that's become through from the Bible, and there's regulations about how we should act, what we should do. Because I'll explain that. What people don't realise is that the Bible clearly teaches that when you abide by your human nature, you become the slave of human nature. So, for example, people who abide by their human nature just want to do what they want to do when they want to do it. But God realises in his wisdom that that's a form of idolatry. So in other words, if you obey your human nature, you're really the slave to the master you obey. So if you obey your human nature, you don't obey God. You can't obey God. But if you abide in God and you realise that what he's saying is true, you will abide by the Bible through the Holy Spirit, through what Jesus has said is right. So what I'm trying to say here is that there's a confliction. So it's clearly evident that God exists, but people don't want to know him because they want to live how they want. They'd rather sort of use excuses and shun him out, push him out. This is dangerous, so dangerous. Don't do it, because we're talking about an eternal being who has phenomenal power. A loving, kind God, but we don't want to get on the wrong side of God. We have been redeemed by Jesus Christ. I implore you to please start reading the Bible. Please start looking, not at does God exist, but just start looking at yes, God exists. What must I know? What must I know about God? What must I start doing? Start reading the Bible, and you'll find that it's true. But it's not easy being Christian, because you have to live your life against what your human nature wants. And this is where the real problem comes in. This is why people oust what Jesus has said. They oust kind of God. They want a God who will let them do what they want and not abide by any rules and regulations. That's what people want. So in other words, people want the glory of the righteous, the pleasure of the wicked. They don't want to understand what is truly right and wrong. So there you go, in a nutshell. God does exist, it's plain and obvious, but people don't really want to know because they want to live how they want. They don't want rules and regulations. It's very simple. There's obviously other reasons why people don't believe, but I'm looking at things very generally. People will try to push evolution and science, but there's always a motive behind it. And like I say, the motive really is that people don't want to bow down to a God. People want to be their own God. People want to be proud of what they've done themselves. They don't want to worship a higher power, but they just don't realise how powerful God is. So they ignore God on a daily basis. Day by day, people shun him out. So there you go in a nutshell. I hope to some degree it may make you rethink about God, this video, and I hope it really has. And I pray to God that you're blessed by the video and that you rethink. Perhaps I'm not really looking at what is obvious, and I'm allowing myself to be dictated by what I want, by my human nature. So I hope it's been of some help to you. All the best.